we live in a time where people are aware of eating disorders, right? And the two that most people know are anorexia and bulimia. I thought those were the most common. Turns out the most common eating disorder, as I understand it, is binge eating disorder. And it's also the most underdiagnosed. So part of what we're trying to do is a combination of things, like one, just educate people. How do we get people to be aware of the dangers that this exists? How do we help society at large talk about it, not be embarrassed by it, not be afraid to ask for help people to understand that help is available, and then also help them get that help.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. So we're here with John McLoughin, one of the founders of Andy's Big Heart. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Sure, thanks for having me.
He's one of the finalists from the nonprofit grant we put together, and while we're not working with him, we wanted to create this podcast. So for our listeners, and just to start out, why don't you tell us a little bit about Andy's Big Heart and what you guys do?
Sure. So Andy's Big Heart is a nonprofit that's fairly young. I started putting it together late 22. I think it became official with the IRS in 23. But what we focus on is providing support to individuals who have or are affected by eating disorders. So my brother, Andy, suffered most of his life with binge eating disorder. He got diagnosed late in his life, and before he passed away, he became very active in trying to help others kind of understand about what was available in terms of treatment, in terms of paths, and really want to carry that forward. So that's what we do. We're still actively pursuing different ways that we can help. A lot of the money we raise goes directly to offsetting costs of inpatient treatment. There's other things we're working on as well, and our motto or slogan is no one should struggle alone, and that's basically what kind of guides us.
And eating disorders are such a weird thing because you have to eat.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something you can just quit and give up.
Yeah.
So how did you guys, when you decided to start this foundation, what was kind of your goal with it?
So the original impetus, now my brother Andy passed away in March, at the end of March of 22. He was 38 years old at the time, single, no kids. And literally the day it happened, one of my first instincts was, how do I create something that's a legacy for him? So that was the initial impetus, was really just, I don't want him to be forgotten, right? So it was a very personal, very emotional thing. But then as we started to look into it, and my other brother, Brian, and I kind of started to dig in, it's like, well, what could we do? It became obvious that Andy was so involved in charitable work, primarily for eating disorder communities, but he helped the homeless. He worked for Marriott, and he would buy hotel rooms on cold nights for homeless people, and there's stories of him giving his brand new jacket to somebody who needed it, that sort of thing. So it became, something charitable became obvious, and I knew, I'll say, a little bit about Andy's journey just because I was his brother. But I had a lot of learning around the eating disorder, I don't know, I'll say community, but the treatments, the diagnoses, what it's like to have one. I've learned a lot actually in the last couple of years. It's a little embarrassing to say because I thought I was there for my brother. And I like to think I was, but knowing what I know now, there's so many things I would have done differently or more while he was still alive to help him or to be there for him. So we're trying to turn that into things we can still do for people that, are here to be helped.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you paint the picture for us of the landscape of the problem with eating disorders and just what's going on right now? What's the current status?
Yeah, I can a little bit. I can tell you what I know. I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist or a doctor in the field. A lot of what I know is from, what I've learned from connecting with my brother's support system and from my own research. But, I think we live in a time where people are aware of eating disorders, right? And the two that most people know are anorexia and bulimia, right? That's what you see kind of on television. You might have seen a documentary or read something. Those are common. I thought those were the most common. Turns out the most common eating disorder, as I understand it, is binge eating disorder, which is what my brother suffered from. And it went undiagnosed for him for most of his life. And I think that's kind of a truism for most people. The most common eating disorder is binge eating disorder, and it's also the most underdiagnosed. There's still a lot of social stigma around it, especially for men. I don't know the statistics, so any numbers I would give you are kind of somewhat made up, but men are susceptible to eating disorders. I don't think there's a huge differentiation between men and women, but it seems that in society it's more acceptable, if you will, for a woman or a female to have an eating disorder. Men, they hardly report it,
It's
and
like
it's very
embarrassing.
It's
Yeah.
right. There's a ton of social stigma around it. But a couple things I do know, and this is a fact I just read the other day. Someone suffering from an eating disorder is 18 times more likely to attempt or commit suicide than somebody without, right? So that's a number that, one, for me is shocking, and two, is not something you hear about, right? You hear, oh, that person, they're not eating enough, or they've got it, they're binging, or what have you. But when you think about it in terms of life, and as there's fatalities associated with it, that's scary. It's also extremely cost prohibitive to get treatment. So for people that are really struggling, like my brother ended up going into an inpatient center for about 3 months. It costs about $1,000 a day. In many cases, insurance companies don't cover it, or the providers are out of network, so you can't use it anyway. It's easy for someone who's really trying to get treatment to spend upwards of $250,000 over their lifetime. And so social stigma, the personal kind of denial that people have, the cost, it creates kind of a dangerous combination. So part of what we're trying to do is a combination of things. Like, one, just educate people, right? How do we get people to be aware of the dangers that this exists? How do we help society at large talk about it, not be embarrassed by it, not be afraid to ask for help, help people to understand that help is available, and then also help them get that help. My brother's case, his story, and it's funny, I have recordings of him kind of telling his story to other people, because after he was diagnosed, after he got treatment, the last couple of years of his life, he would go around and speak to people about it, tell his story, as an advocate, as an educator. His story began when he was like 6 years old. So from that point in time, he knew that he had, or in hindsight, he had this thing that was kind of influencing him, controlling him, affecting him. He didn't have a name for it. He didn't have a diagnosis for it. He didn't have a treatment plan for it. He had, people kind of teasing him because he was a bigger kid. He was doing things and, eating in shame. One of the stories he tells is his very first day at college, when everyone's in the dorm, meeting each other, hanging out. His roommate wasn't there that first week or something like that. So he ordered like 3 pizzas and locked himself in a room and just binged. And he wasn't proud of it. It wasn't satisfying. In that particular case, people that do that, they don't like it. Mm-hmm. It's almost a compulsion in the moment. So how do we get people to know that this is a thing and know that it's okay? It's a mental illness. It's not a weakness. It's not something that's wrong with you. But he didn't get diagnosed till he was, I want to say 33, 34 years old. And that for him was the life-changing thing. He was really at rock bottom. He was in some pretty dark places. He was depressed. He had a lot of real problems. And almost as a last-ditch effort, he sought out this inpatient facility, and that saved his life. It gave him a name for what he was dealing with. It gave him, he was finally with people who could give him tools. It's not something that's ever cured. It's not like, oh, he no longer has an eating disorder, but you have to learn how to, one, accept yourself, manage it, make healthier choices, forgive yourself when you fail, but move forward. And for him, it wasn't about losing weight or having a certain body type. What always impressed me about him and sort of his treatment journey that I saw was it was about self-acceptance. And along the way, he did lose some weight and he did become healthier, but that wasn't the goal, right? It wasn't like, oh, I need to fit into this size pair of pants or I need to have this certain body shape to look good. It was him really coming to terms, I think, with that the disease doesn't define him, and he is a valuable person in his own right. Which, ironically, all the people around him knew that, but that was part of what he used to share was like he didn't.
Is binge eating something that stems from depression or something like that, or is it its own isolated?
I think there's like a comorbidity. I think they're related. I don't know if there's a cause and effect there.
Yeah, which one comes first? 'Cause
Yeah, but I do think that it's often the case that people who suffer with binge eating disorder, but probably lots of other eating disorders, are co-diagnosed with depression as well. And my brother, he also had ADHD, right? There's probably a laundry list of things that are all interlocked in some way that I certainly couldn't explain. But my sense or my understanding is it's rarely one thing. It's not like, oh, you stubbed your toe, let me put a Band-Aid on it or something like that. It's usually much more complex. Yeah.
And so, what are some of the treatments available for binge eating?
Yeah. So in binge eating, that's a great question. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, an expert. I do know that, it's a mental illness. And so mental health treatment is the path. And I think that's not a binge eating disorder thing. I think that's everything. But it's hard. And it's from what I have seen and observed and understand, it's not something that's easy for someone to tackle on their own. Before Andy went into a professional treatment facility that knew how to work with someone like him, he worked with Overeaters Anonymous. He went to the gym. He hired a personal trainer. He tried every fad diet that you could try. He did all those things. But it wasn't until he started working on, like I said, self-accept, like my observer's vantage point of what he went through was the treatment that really helped him was when he started working on himself and not working on his weight. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so kind of like group therapy. Is it like in the category of addictions where you might have like group therapies and things like that?
I don't know if it's in that category, but that absolutely was part of his treatment. So his inpatient program, like I said, it was about 3 months long. It was residential. He lived there. He had an individual therapist. He had group work to do. I know there was some family work. My parents would dial into some calls. He had to actually go to Chicago that's where the place was. I got involved in one phone call. What they talked about, what the specific treatment was, I couldn't tell you. I do know at one point he had to, or they, like, had is probably too strong. I think it's called exposure treatment. So he had to do things like go to McDonald's, order food, sit at a table with it, not eat it, and then throw it away. Right? Which even I, sitting here saying that, is like, ooh, like I don't want to do that, right? But he had to do those sorts of things. And it's interesting because I have some experience with my son with cognitive behavioral therapy. And those type of exposures are very related or familiar to me from what I've seen with my son. So I imagine I don't know if it falls into addiction. It might. I always associate it more with like compulsion, like OCD type behaviors.
So what is Andy's Big Heart doing to connect the resources that you have with people who need help?
Yeah, so we're doing a couple things right now, very tactically. We've got partnerships with a couple organizations. There's a group called the Eating Recovery Center, which is a national organization that provides treatment and support services. It's the place that my brother went to. So we're working with them. There's another organization called Project Heal, which we've discovered already has sort of a pipeline so that they can connect some of the funds that we raise to people in need to pay for treatment that they can't afford, which was a great thing to discover early on because, we could raise some money, but it's like, well, how do we get it into the hands of people that need it? that's not a problem that I had really thought about until suddenly I had it, which is like, okay, I've got some money. Do I just say who wants it? How do I vet them? And how do I, and if I only have a limited amount of money, but I got 20 people who all say they need it, how do I know where I can do the most good with it? Right? Is it you divide it by 20 people? So early on, the last year and a half or so, we've been working with Project Heal kind of for that pipeline perspective. We also have built some relationships with the Renfrew Center, which is a Philadelphia-based organization that provides eating disorder treatment. They have a couple locations, and with them, we've done some things where we've donated needed items, soap, toothbrushes, and then also some gifts, blankets, things around the holidays to help the people that are in the treatment hopefully understand that like they're seen and that they're appreciated as people. We have that sort of experience from Andy of knowing how lonely this can be and how difficult it can be. So what we've been trying to do so far is like, yeah, there's a financial component to it, but there's also just be a good human component to it as well. And so we're trying to do both of those things. We are pretty new, so it's only been a couple years. So we've got some other things we're expanding on, or we're investigating. One of them is we're working with some licensed therapists who specialize in eating disorders, trying to find some restaurant partners to explore whether or not there's things we can do to help the restaurant industry, or at least specific restaurants, create a space that's more comfortable for people who have eating disorders. As it turns out, and this was probably not surprising, one of the most stressful situations for people that suffer from eating disorders is going out to eat. Everything from, for larger people, do they fit in the booth, to did the waitress make a joke about, oh, you look like you could eat a steak, or something like that, to just the pressure that they might put on themselves of like how many calories, to speaking of calories, reading a menu. One of the most stressful things apparently you can do is read the calorie content of what you're about to order, right? It for some people it's like, okay, I feel like I'm making a wiser choice if I know what I'm about to consume. For other people, that adds a tremendous amount of pressure and stress and anxiety. So we're trying to see, is there something we can do that could make that better? Is there training we can give to front of house staff? Is there can we lay out a restaurant? Can we get chairs that are sturdier? Things like that. So that's something we're exploring a little bit. The other thing I'm kind of excited about, this is very new, but there's a thing called bariatric furniture, bariatric chairs in particular, which are chairs that are made to be able to support greater weight than, I'll say, the average person. One of the things my brother told one of his therapists, who I'm still in touch with, I got in touch with him after he passed, was that when he went to treatment, it was the first time in his adult life that he sat on a piece of furniture that he wasn't afraid was going to break, right? And that's one of those things where it's like, I don't think about that. But imagine what it's like to go to a restaurant or go to a friend's house or go to a school play or go anywhere and not be sure if you can sit down because of what might happen if you do.
Right? Yeah, I feel like that feeds into where like, all right, I can't go anywhere, it's not safe, and then you're just alone and isolated, and
yeah, I think
it
that's
just
true.
Feeds the problem.
I think that's true. So one of the things we're looking into right now is how do we get some of that furniture that's very expensive into the hands of people that can't afford it themselves, whether that's like a doctor's office or someone's home. So I hope in the next couple months we've got that pipeline set up as well.
So as you're growing, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you face?
It's a couple things. I think one of them is just from I'll say business perspective, if you will, because even though we're a nonprofit, there's no aspect of what we're doing where we're making money. It's still in very many ways to me turning into like it is. We're starting a business. We got to create this thing. I got to build a network. I got to build the pipelines, or find the pipelines where I can funnel the resources we have into the good that we're trying to do with it. that just takes work. That takes time. It takes a lot more than I expected when I, thought, oh, I'll start a nonprofit. In terms of eating disorders in particular, one of the things that I think we're seeing, this could be a bias I have, is just that everybody knows about eating disorders, and it's not the flashy thing to support, right? I don't know that people understand, how life impacting it is for people who are really struggling with it.
So it's like an awareness thing. Like you need to get the word out about how serious this is.
Yeah, I mean, when you list, all the things that people could donate to, their time or their treasure, where does this stack, right? And I don't want to take away from any other cause because there's so much need in the world. But that is a challenge for us, is finding the people that like, no, this is the cause I want to contribute to. It's important to me because of my brother. It's important to some people because of, everybody knows somebody, but have they really seen the struggle? Have they really seen the impact? Have they really seen, the possible negative outcomes from it? I think that's less, in society, that's less obvious.
So it's kind of like you're trying to unite it sounds like there's isolated people all over the world who have, a family member or somebody who's struggled with this.
Yeah.
And you're trying to unite them, create this community around it.
I think that's fair. I mean, that's what, like I said, even on the t-shirt I'm wearing, the back of the t-shirt has our slogan, no one should struggle alone.
Right.
Right. My brother, before he got his diagnosis, was went into some of the darkest places that I've ever seen a person go into because he didn't think anybody could help him. It's not even that he knew I was there. My parents were there. My other brother, he knew we were there and we loved him. He just didn't see any way that anybody could help him. And so I have to imagine there's many other people like my brother out there who just have no idea. They don't know what's wrong with them. They don't know that help's available. Even if they do, they don't know how they can afford it. They don't know, how can I go to Chicago for 3 months of my life? I've got a job. I've got bills to pay. Right? How do I do that? So that's what we're trying to do, is get people aware, both from a societal perspective, so that some of the stigma can come away from it, and also from the people that are afflicted, so that they know there is a path to potential recovery, at least to help. And then how do we get rid of all the impediments that are there, so that they can start making that journey?
And it feels like this is like a really good time in society, that like society has woken up to the idea that there's all these different types of mental illnesses.
Yeah.
And they're each different in their own way. So it's like they all need their own type of support. And there's so many people struggling with the same things that you might be. So
yeah.
It does seem like a time where we're kind of accepting of that idea.
I do agree. I think we live in a time where mental health is a topic that gets attention that when I was, in high school was probably not the case.
It was kind of like suck it up,
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're giving it the attention that it needs
Yes.
for people to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah, just getting people to understand what the disorder is like for the people who have it's such a big thing, because there's so many people, they see someone who's really overweight and it's just, oh, they're just lazy, they can't get it together, or they just need to get some control and stop eating, but it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's interesting, since my brother passed, because he was so active in trying to help other people that were, where he was before he found out that there was options. We have recordings of him speaking. He was working on a podcast with one of his therapists that we have those recordings. We have some of his writings. We have his journals that he took, some of them when he was in treatment, some of them after the fact. And it's interesting going through some of that, because I as his brother, I'm always like, well, how much of this should I not be reading, because it was never meant for me to read or see or view. And so that's a tightrope I walk. But from the things that I have looked at, I am very grateful, both from the charity perspective, but also as his brother, that like I have some of that material, right? In life, we never sat down and had that really deep conversation, but because he was trying to help other people, he captured it. And so I think I have a perspective that if he had survived, I don't know that I would be as passionate or involved or educated myself about these things. And he's my brother, which is a weird feeling to have. It's like, I'd give anything to have him back. And on the other hand, the journey that it's taken me on has caused me to grow over the last couple of years as well. And I don't want to give that up either.
So as you're moving forward with the foundation, what are some ways that people can help support you guys?
So the primary way is we, at the risk of being crass, financial support. Our website is andysbigheart.org. You can go on that website and make donations of any amount. All that money is every dollar. I'd like to say every dollar that we raise is potentially saving someone's life or life saving. That's the easiest and most direct way. I will also say if anybody out there is watching or listening to this and has experience in the domain or in mental health and is willing to have a conversation, I'm always looking to build a network. If anybody has an idea or, hey, I've lived through this, or I know someone who's lived through this, and this is what helped them, or this is would have been great if we had X, Y, and Z. We are at a point where we're a small org, we're new, we can make some pivots, we can make things happen. So if there's a gap out there, I'd love to know about it because we'd like to try to fill it.
Yeah, any of those potential partnership organizations too, I imagine would be
Absolutely.
great. Just build that
Yep.
stronghold of people all working together.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great. And then for anybody who's looking for assistance who might be suffering from an eating disorder, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Same thing. If you go to our website, you'll see our email address is info@andysbigheart.org. You can reach out there and we can point you to the network that we already have. We have a lot of great avenues. So depending on what the need is, we can, we won't just give you a list of email addresses, but we can help with that as well.
Okay,
100%.
great. And any other message you want to get out while we're on?
Just, thanks to both of you for having me on here. I really appreciate I've never done anything like this. This is the first time in a sort of a public way we've gotten to talk about this, except at a couple of small fundraisers we ran. It's really a purpose that's close to my heart, close to my family's heart. And my desire is to help as many people as we can. I can't help my brother anymore. He can't do what he was doing. And I know it was important to him that other people could learn from his experiences. And so I just want to help as many people as we can.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, so anyone who wants to check things out, or they can go to the website. So John, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
And good luck with everything.
All right, thanks.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.